UNEP's Emission Gap Report 2022 corroborates and confirms that given insufficient current efforts, warming will further rise to 2.8%, and we are staring at a runaway warming effect whose consequences will certainly be unforgiving. The gravity of the matter cannot be overstated. Our global situation is dire. We must mobilize to do the right thing as a matter of urgency. There is no more room to ignore, evade, or delay calls for substantial cuts in emissions, especially by the big emitters. Unless significant emission reduction is achieved rapidly, the adaptation gap continues to widen. In the last 12 months, since COP26 in Glasgow, extreme weather records have been broken on every continent, from the worst drought in 40 years currently ravaging the Horn of Africa, including Kenya, to the devastating floods that hit Pakistan and more recently Nigeria, and the worst European drought in 500 years, heat waves, wildfires in many parts of the globe. The litany of disastrous climate impacts continue. These calamities have been more pronounced and destructive in vulnerable countries, especially in Africa. In the IPCC's sixth assessment report paints a grim picture going forward if urgent climate measures are not undertaken now. The window for action is fast closing, and the onus squarely falls upon the current world leaders to stand up as the generation that can be counted on to take hard decisions, but to do the right thing. We cannot afford to continue ignoring the urgent warnings of science. Ladies and gentlemen, effective response to climate change requires adequate and predictable financing, capacity building, technology development and transfer. Climate finance remains the single most critical enabler in unlocking climate action and especially addressing adaptation in vulnerable communities of the global south. Between 2019 and 2020, a total of $11.4 billion has been made available to Africa for adaptation against an estimated need of $579 billion in adaptation investment by 2030. Clearly, this level of financing falls far short of what is required to build resilience in Africa. I call upon the developed parties to meet all their pledges. This includes doubling of the adaptation finance agreed upon in Glasgow and the urgent implementation of the $100 billion commitment. Quite clearly, these funds are inadequate for purposes of adaptation in Africa, as well as covering loss and damage as confirmed by the IPCC sixth assessment report. The report emphatically confirms that loss and damage is happening now. And I add that all the phenomena that characterizes or inflicts loss and damage have sadly become the lived experience of many African communities.